Hi, this is Ryan Dotson with SurvivalSullivan.com. Today in this video, what I want to talk about a little bit is short-term emergencies. These are going to be a lot more common than most bug-out or bug-in situations. We're talking about things that could put you out of your home for a few days. The four that I'm going to focus on are going to be fire, flood, burglary, and a blackout, a power shortage. So I'm going to go through just a few things that you can do to prepare for these situations, as far as training and items that you can purchase so that if that does happen, you're more prepared and it doesn't escalate into a major issue. Let's start with a house fire real quick. Now, one thing that I really want to emphasize with several of these scenarios is if you want your insurance company to work well with you, you have to have documentation. And so your digital camera is your best friend whenever you're wanting to work with your insurance company. What you need to do is anything in your home that has any value of it, make sure you take a picture and have it saved somewhere safe outside of your home where if there's a fire, that does not get destroyed, or go ahead and get it to your insurance agent, because the only way that you can ensure you're going to get a comparable replacement from your insurance company is to have documentation. So you really want to take the time to do that. Now, in addition to that, when we're dealing with house fires, there's a few things that you can do to prevent and to deal with this particular scenario. Smoke detectors are very, very important. Make sure that you have as many of these in your home as you possibly can, in as many different rooms as you possibly can, so that you can get out of the home quickly. In addition to that, most homes have at least a few fire extinguishers, so you're going to want to make sure that those are kept handy and you know where they're at. You also want to have a plan in place. And this is going to be a plan to get everybody out of the home safely and then also deal with the fire in a productive way. So, you want to sit down with your family and decide, okay, smoke alarm goes off. Who gets Andrew? Who gets Jesse? Get the kids out of the house, get pets out of the house. Who's going to call 911, and who, if anybody, is going to grab a fire extinguisher and try and subdue the fire. So make sure you discuss that well in advance and practice that with your family. Moving on to a blackout scenario. Now, this is something that is getting to be more and more a concern with potential EMP strikes. But just, in everyday life, everybody's experienced a blackout. Typically they're short, but not always. If you have a major storm, it might take a few days to restore power. And a lot of people, their home's electricity is running their heat, it's running their water pump, it's really keeping everything in the home going. So during certain times of the year, this can be a major issue. Things that you want to have in place and know where they're at, to where you can even get to them in the dark, are going to be flashlights. You want to make sure that you have a flashlight handy. You definitely want to have some candles. I keep a lot of these little tea candles handy. They're cheap and they do fine as far as providing additional ambient light. You want to have some blankets around, because if the power goes out and your heat shuts down, it might get pretty cold in there. You want to have an alternative cooking method, which, here we were able to go out and grill if we need to, or build a fire in the fire pit, or whatever the case may be. But you want to know how you're going to cook if you lose power to your stove. Lanterns are a good thing to keep around in addition to candles. They're more enclosed and a little bit safer as far as a fire hazard. You do want to have some clean water around. If you lose power to your pump, it may be difficult for you to get the water that you need. So it's a good idea to have some water stored. And then again, you want to have a plan in place. What are you going to do if the power goes out? Are you going to stay home? Are you going to try and go to a relative's house that lives outside the city? Again, with all these scenarios, planning is the most important thing. Moving on to floods. Now, flooding is kind of a unique situation because you're probably going to have a little bit of notice in advance if flooding is going to be an issue. Chances are if your property is susceptible to floods. So if there's a storm coming in that you think that's going to be an issue, again, planning is key. You want to have somebody designated to cut the power to whatever's going to be the flooded area of the home, whether that be the basement or the first floor, to make sure that you don't have any issues with electrocution. You want to have a plan in place to move any furniture necessary so it doesn't get damaged. I recall a flood that we had when I was in my early 20s, and as soon as the water started coming into the basement, we were moving all of that furniture up into the garage. So you want to have that planned in advance and have a spot that's going to be dry in case it's still raining for that type of thing. If the flood gets bad to where it's going to be a safety issue, you want to have a plan in place to escape to higher ground, whether that's going to a neighbor's house or to a relative's house, or just walking to a hillside at the end of your street. You want to be able to get away from that water because it's even at shallow depths, it can really affect your health. You don't know what all's in that water. It's going to dredge up sewage and all kinds of things that can get you sick. So you want to stay away from the flood water as much as you can. Having a few emergency blankets and a set of dry clothes handy is going to be important because as you're moving your furniture, you're probably going to get wet. So you want to make sure that you can stay warm in that scenario, especially in the wintertime. And then it could affect your drinking water, so you want to have a supply of clean water stored as well. Last one I want to talk about is burglary. If somebody breaks into your house, it's an issue as far as safety, and then of course the potential products that you might lose. Again, taking pictures of the valuables in your house for your insurance company is very important. But there's other things that you can do in advance. You can install a security system, which anymore there are do-it-yourself security systems that will contact the local authorities that are pretty inexpensive and easy to install. So we have one of those. Also, you can set up additional alarms, cameras, motion sensors. One of the things that we have on our property are these motion sensor lights where it'll light up if somebody's walking near our front door. So that's an indicator to both us and to the person trying to break into the property that we know what's going on. You want to have some sort of a weapon on the property, preferably a handgun. We typically use either a handgun or a shotgun as far as having something handy to defend the home. But you also want to make sure that's locked up in a safe because you do not want somebody breaking into the home to be able to get a hold of a firearm. That just makes them that much more dangerous if they don't already have one. Last thing is you want to have a defense plan. Okay, if somebody's breaking into the home, what steps are you going to take? You jump out of bed, you go get the kids, you get into a back bedroom, and one person needs to defend a choke point. You want to determine where is a narrow area where this burglar is going to have to pass through that area to get to you and your family. If you can defend that choke point, then you can keep your family safe. So that's the main priority. Obviously, belongings can be replaced through the insurance company, but the safety of your family is most important. So these are just 4 small scenarios where, short term you may need to have some additional supplies to get through it comfortably. I suggest you take the time to discuss this with your family. And with SurvivalSullivan.com, this is Ryan Dotson. I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.